My name is Connie, and I am 54 years old. For most of my life, I believed family meant standing by each other no matter what. I thought my sister Patricia felt the same way. So when she invited my son David and me to her wedding, I was genuinely happy. I imagined a day filled with love and celebration. But I had no idea that day would become one of the most humbling experiences of my life until it became something else entirely, something I will never forget. Before we dive into what happened, I would love to know where you are watching this from. Drop your location in the comments below. If you have ever felt underestimated or looked down on by people who should have loved you, go ahead and hit that like button right now. And please subscribe to this channel, because what I am about to share with you is a story of dignity, quiet strength, and a twist that left an entire room speechless. Let me take you back to where this all began, and you will understand why that black limousine changed everything. Patricia and I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, in a modest home on Elm Street. I was 6 years older than her, which meant I spent much of my childhood looking after my baby sister. Our parents, Donald and Eleanor, loved us both, but even as a child, I could sense the difference in how they treated us. Patricia was the pretty one. She had golden curls and blue eyes that sparkled when she smiled. People would stop my mother on the street just to compliment her. I, on the other hand, was plain. Brown hair, average features, nothing that turned heads. As we grew older, that difference became more pronounced. When I was 12 and wanted to take piano lessons, my father said we needed to save money for Patricia's future dance classes. When I turned 16 and asked for a new dress for the school dance, my mother handed me a dress from 2 years prior, saying it still fit fine. But Patricia got new dresses every season. Her birthday parties were grand events with dozens of guests and elaborate cakes. Mine were quiet affairs with just family and a simple homemade cake. I never resented Patricia for this. She was my little sister, and I loved her. I accepted that this was just how things were. I learned early on that my role was to support, to sacrifice, to make way for Patricia's brightness to shine. And I did it willingly, because I believed that was what being a good older sister meant. When I turned 22, I met a man named Frank at a local bar. He was charming, funny, and he paid attention to me in a way no one else ever had. We married quickly, and within a year, I was pregnant with David. Those early months of marriage felt like a dream. But dreams do not always last. Frank changed after David was born. The charm disappeared, replaced by anger, and the smell of whiskey on his breath every night. He would come home late, yelling about bills and responsibilities he never wanted. I tried to make it work for 3 years, but when David was still a toddler, I made the hardest decision of my life. I left Frank and became a single mother. My parents were not supportive. My father said I had made my bed and now had to lie in it. My mother simply shook her head and said she hoped I knew what I was doing. There was no offer of help, no invitation to move back home. So I found a tiny apartment on the east side of town, got a job as a secretary at a law firm, and started working a second job, waiting tables at a diner 4 nights a week. Those years were the hardest of my life. I would wake at 5 in the morning to get David ready for daycare work all day. At the law firm, pick him up, feed him dinner, put him to bed, and then head to the diner until midnight. I slept maybe 4 or 5 hours a night. My hands were always dry and cracked from washing dishes. My feet ached constantly. But David never went hungry. He always had clean clothes, even if I had to stay up late sewing patches on his pants. He always had school supplies, even if I skipped meals to afford them. Meanwhile, Patricia was attending college. Our parents paid her tuition in full. She studied communications and lived in a nice apartment near campus. She would call me sometimes to tell me about parties she attended and boys she was dating. I would listen, genuinely happy for her, even though my own life was so different. I never told her how hard things were for me. I did not want her to feel guilty or burdened by my struggles. When Patricia was 26, she married a man named Warren, who owned a chain of car dealerships across Ohio and Kentucky. The wedding was beautiful, held at a country club with 300 guests. I wore a dress I bought at a thrift store and sat in the middle section, watching my sister float down the aisle in a gown that probably cost more than 6 months of my rent. Patricia and Warren had one daughter, Ashley, and for a while, they seemed happy. They lived in a massive house in Westchester, one of the wealthiest suburbs of Cincinnati. Patricia stopped working and spent her days shopping, getting her nails done, and attending charity luncheons. We saw each other maybe twice a year, usually at holidays. Each time we met, I noticed Patricia had changed a little more. She talked about expensive things, people with important titles, places I had never been. She never asked about my life anymore, and slowly, I began to feel like a stranger to my own sister. When David was 18, he earned a full scholarship to Stanford University. I cried the day he told me. All those years of sacrifice had been worth it. My son was brilliant, kind, and hardworking. He studied computer science and graduated at the top of his class. After college, he moved to San Francisco and started working in tech. He called me every week and visited twice a year. He was humble about his work, never boasting or giving me too many details. He would just say things were going well and that he was happy. I retired early from my secretary job when I turned 52. My pension was small, but I had saved carefully over the years. I lived simply in a small house I had managed to buy on the outskirts of town. I spent my days reading, gardening, and volunteering at the local library. It was a quiet life, but it was mine, and I was content. Then, 3 months ago, I received an envelope in the mail. Inside was a thick, expensive wedding invitation with gold lettering. Patricia was getting married again. She and Warren had divorced 2 years earlier, after he had an affair with his secretary. Her new fiancé was a man named Gregory, a real estate developer. The wedding was going to be held at the Hilton in Columbus, one of the fanciest hotels in the state. The invitation specified formal attire required. I was surprised to be invited honestly. Patricia and I had barely spoken in the past year, but I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this wedding could be a chance for us to reconnect, to remember that we were sisters. So I called her to congratulate her. She answered on the 4th ring. Her voice was distracted, busy. "Connie, hi. Did you get the invitation?" "I did. Congratulations, Patricia. I am so happy for you." "Thanks." There was a pause. "Listen, the wedding is going to be very formal, very upscale. Gregory has a lot of important clients and colleagues coming. So just make sure you dress appropriately, okay?" Her tone stung, but I tried to brush it off. "Of course. I will find something nice." "Good. And Connie, do not forget, this is a high-end event. I just want everything to be perfect." "I understand." We said our goodbyes, and I hung up feeling uneasy. But I pushed the feeling aside. This was my sister's wedding. I wanted to be there for her. Finding something appropriate to wear was harder than I expected. Formal attire meant an evening gown, or at least a cocktail dress, and those were expensive. I went to several department stores, but everything was far outside my budget. A decent dress cost at least $150, and that did not include shoes or accessories. Finally, I went to a thrift store on Vine Street that I had shopped at for years. I searched through the racks for over an hour before I found a navy blue dress with long sleeves and a modest neckline. It was simple, a little dated, but it was clean and in good condition. The price tag said $20. I bought it along with a pair of black flats for $15. At home, I tried the dress on and made a few adjustments with my sewing kit so it would fit better. It was not glamorous, but it was respectable, and it was the best it could do. I also needed a gift. I went to a home goods store and found a beautiful silver picture frame for $30. It was elegant and practical, something Patricia and Gregory could use. I wrapped it carefully in silver paper and tied it with a white ribbon. A week before the wedding, David called me. "Mom, I am flying in for Aunt Patricia's wedding. I will go with you." I was surprised. "David, you do not have to do that. I know you are busy." "I want to. You should not have to go alone." I felt a wave of gratitude. "Thank you, sweetheart. That means so much to me." David arrived 2 days before the wedding. He looked healthy and happy, dressed in dark jeans and a casual shirt. We spent the evening catching up over dinner at my kitchen table. He told me about his work, though. As always, he kept the details vague. I assumed he was doing well, but I never pressed him for specifics. I was just happy to have him home. The night before the wedding, David pulled an old suit out of his suitcase. It was a few years old, a bit worn at the elbows, but he had it dry cleaned. "This will have to do," he said with a smile. "You look handsome no matter what you wear." I told him, and I meant it. The next morning, I woke early with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. I told myself it was just nerves, that everything would be fine. But deep down, I had a sense that something was off. Then, 1 week before the wedding, my phone rang. It was Patricia. I answered, hoping to hear some warmth in her voice. Instead, she sounded tense. "Connie, I need to talk to you about something." "What is it?" There was a long pause. "The wedding is very formal, very high class. Gregory's boss is going to be there, along with some very important clients. I need everyone to look well appropriate." "I told you I have a dress. It is nice." "Where did you get it?" I hesitated. "A thrift store." "But Patricia, it looks lovely." "I made sure of that." Another pause. This one felt colder. "Connie, I do not know how to say this, but maybe it would be better if you and David just came to the ceremony and skipped the reception." My heart dropped. "What? Why?" "It is just that I do not want people to think we are, not on the same level." I could not believe what I was hearing. "Patricia, I am your sister. I know and I love you, but Ashley already asked me why you always dress so cheap. I do not want to embarrass Gregory in front of his colleagues." The word cheap hit me like a slap. "I will be respectful. David and I will not embarrass you." "Fine, but please sit in the back. And do not draw attention to yourselves." She hung up before I could respond. I stood there, holding the phone, feeling smaller than I had felt in years. David walked into the room and saw my face. "Mom, what is wrong?" I forced a smile. "Nothing. Everything is fine." But David knew me too well. He looked at me for a long moment, then said quietly, "We do not have to go." "Yes, we do," I said firmly. "She is still my sister." The morning of the wedding, David and I got ready in silence. I put on my navy dress and black flats. I looked at myself in the mirror and tried to feel confident, but Patricia's words kept echoing in my mind. Cheap, embarrassing, not on the same level. David wore his old suit and a tie he had borrowed from a friend years ago. He looked at me and smiled. "You look beautiful, Mom." "Thank you, sweetheart." We climbed into my old Honda Civic and drove the hour and a half to Columbus. The hotel was massive, a towering building with glass doors and a valet service out front. I saw the valet attendants in their crisp uniforms and decided to park in the public lot a few blocks away to save money. David and I walked to the hotel together. He held my hand, and I squeezed it gratefully. As we approached the entrance, I saw other guests arriving in luxury cars. The women wore designer gowns with glittering jewelry. The men wore expensive suits. I felt a pang of insecurity, but held my head high. Inside the lobby, everything was polished marble and chandeliers. A sign directed guests to the grand ballroom on the second floor. We took the elevator up and followed the signs to a large room where the ceremony would take place. A young woman with a clipboard greeted us at the door. "Names, please." "Connie and David. I am the bride's sister." She scanned her list, then looked up with a tight smile. "Oh, yes, you are seated in the back." She gestured toward the very last row of chairs, right next to the kitchen doors. I felt my cheeks flush, but said nothing. David and I walked to our seats and sat down. Around us, the room filled with well-dressed guests who chatted and laughed. No one looked at us. No one acknowledged us. We were invisible. Then, about 10 minutes before the ceremony was supposed to start, I saw Ashley walking through the room. She was Patricia's daughter, 23 years old, and she looked stunning in a pink bridesmaid dress. Her hair was professionally styled, and her makeup was flawless. She spotted us and walked over her heels, clicking on the marble floor. "Oh, Aunt Connie," she said with a smirk. "You actually came." I stood up and smiled. "Of course. Your mother invited us." "You look lovely, Ashley." She barely glanced at me. Her eyes were fixed on my dress. "Is that vintage?" "It is from a thrift store," I said honestly. Ashley let out a small laugh. "Of course it is." She turned to David. "And you must be David. Mom told me you work in tech or something." David nodded politely. "Something like that?" Ashley looked him up and down, taking in his old suit. "Well, at least you tried to dress up. That is sweet." Then she leaned in closer, her voice dripping with condescension. "You two look so out of place here. But I guess it is sweet that you came. Just try not to embarrass us, okay?" She walked away before I could respond. I sat back down, my hands shaking. David reached over and took my hand again. "Ignore her, Mom," he said quietly. I nodded, but inside, I felt humiliated. A few minutes later, Patricia herself walked through the room. She was not in her wedding dress yet, just a silk robe as she checked on last-minute details. When she saw David and me, she stopped. Her expression tightened. She walked over quickly. "Connie," she hissed under her breath. "I told you to dress appropriately." "I did my best, Patricia." She looked me up and down, her eyes critical. "That dress looks like it is from the 80s. "It is all I could afford." Patricia glanced around nervously, making sure no one was listening. "Just stay back here, okay? Do not talk to anyone important. And please, do not mention that you are my sister, unless someone asks directly." I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Patricia, what has happened to you?" "I am trying to build a life here, Connie. Gregory's boss is in this room. I cannot have people thinking I come from nothing." She gestured at me and David, as if we were evidence of some shameful past. Then she turned and walked away, without another word. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. David's hand tightened around mine. "Mom, we should leave." "No," I said firmly. "We are staying." So we sat there in the back row, holding hands, as the room filled with people who did not know we existed. And I made a silent promise to myself. No matter what happened, I would not let Patricia break me. The ceremony began right on time. Music filled the room, and everyone stood as Patricia made her entrance. She looked stunning in a white gown with lace and beading that must have cost thousands of dollars. Gregory stood at the front, smiling proudly as she walked down the aisle. The officiant spoke about love and commitment, and Patricia and Gregory exchanged vows that sounded rehearsed and perfect. I watched my sister from the back row and tried to remember the little girl she used to be, the one who would crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, the one who cried when I left for college. That girl was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. The ceremony ended, and everyone applauded. Patricia and Gregory walked back down the aisle, together beaming. They did not look at me, not once. After the ceremony, guests were directed to the ballroom for the reception. David and I followed the crowd into an even larger room, decorated with white flowers, crystal centerpieces, and soft lighting. Round tables were arranged throughout the space, each one labeled with a number and names. David and I searched for our names and found them at table 20, tucked in the far corner near the kitchen doors. The table had 5 chairs, but only 3 other people were seated there, all strangers who barely acknowledged us. Everyone else seemed to know each other, chatting and laughing. We sat in silence. A waiter came by with champagne. David and I each took a glass. I sipped mine slowly, trying to calm my nerves. At the front of the room, Patricia and Gregory sat at a head table with Ashley and the rest of the wedding party. They were surrounded by flowers and lights, the center of attention. Patricia was laughing, radiant, completely in her element. She never once looked in our direction. As dinner was served, I picked at my food. It was delicious salmon with roasted vegetables, but I had no appetite. David ate quietly beside me, his jaw tight. I could tell he was angry, but he was holding it in for my sake. Then, halfway through the meal, I heard a voice behind me. I turned to see Ashley, standing with a group of her friends. They were all dressed in expensive clothes, holding champagne glasses, and giggling. Ashley pointed in our direction. "Oh, that is my Aunt Connie," she said loudly enough for us to hear. "She has had a really tough life. It is kind of sad, actually." Her friends looked over at us and whispered amongst themselves. One of them laughed. I felt my face burn with shame. A woman seated near us leaned over and asked, "So how do you know the bride?" I swallowed hard. "I am her sister." The woman looked surprised. "Oh, I did not know she had a sister. She never mentioned you." I did not know what to say to that, so I just nodded and looked down at my plate. David leaned close to me. "Mom, this is wrong. Let's go." "Just a little longer," I whispered. After dinner, Patricia stood up to give a speech. She thanked everyone for coming, talked about how much Gregory meant to her, and expressed gratitude to her daughter Ashley. She thanked Gregory's parents. She thanked her late parents. She thanked the wedding planner. She did not thank me. She did not even acknowledge that I was in the room. When she finished, everyone applauded. I clapped too, even though my hands felt numb. David stood up. "Mom, we are leaving. Now." This time, I did not argue. I stood up, smoothed my dress, and followed him out of the ballroom. We walked through the lobby in silence. My chest felt tight, and my throat ached from holding back tears. We stepped outside into the cool, evening air. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the entire day pressing down on me. "I am so sorry you had to go through that," David said quietly. "It is not your fault." We started walking toward the parking lot, ready to leave and never look back. But then something happened that changed everything. As we stepped off the curb, a long black limousine pulled up to the front entrance of the hotel. It was sleek, polished, and gleamed under the streetlights. The kind of car that made people stop and stare. A driver stepped out. He was dressed in a sharp black suit, white gloves, and a chauffeur's cap. He looked around for a moment, then his eyes landed on David. He walked directly toward us. "Mr. Harrison," the driver said, with a respectful nod. "It is time, sir." I froze. "Mr. Harrison." I looked at David, confused. He glanced at me, and I saw something in his expression. Resolve. Determination. "I am sorry, Mom," he said softly. "I wanted to wait a little longer, but I think it is time." "Time for what?" I asked, completely bewildered. The driver opened the door to the limousine. Inside, the interior was pristine. Soft leather seats, ambient lighting, a bottle of champagne on ice. It looked like something out of a movie. David took my hand. "Mom, we need to go back inside." "David, what is going on?" He smiled gently. "Trust me." Before I could ask anything else, another man stepped out of the hotel. He was tall, wearing an expensive suit and carrying a leather briefcase. He walked straight to David. "Mr. Harrison, everything is ready," the man said. "Whenever you are." David nodded. "Thank you, Mr. Phillips." I stood there, my mind racing. "Mr. Harrison, sir," what was happening? A few guests who had stepped outside for fresh air noticed the limousine. They stopped and stared. I saw Ashley come out with some of her friends. Her eyes went wide when she saw the car. "What the heck?" Ashley muttered. She walked closer, her curiosity getting the better of her. "David, what is this?" David turned to her, his expression calm. "This is my car." Ashley laughed. "Your car? Yeah, right. You probably rented it to impress people." David did not respond. He just looked at her, and something in his gaze made her falter. "Wait, seriously?" Ashley asked, her smile fading. By now, more people were coming outside. Word was spreading that there was a limousine out front. I saw Patricia push through the crowd, Gregory beside her. She looked annoyed. "What is going on out here?" Patricia demanded. Then she saw the limo. Her eyes widened. She looked at David, then at me, then back at David. "Whose car is that?" David stepped forward. "Mine." Patricia laughed, but it sounded forced. David stopped playing around. David did not smile. Instead, he turned to the crowd that was forming. "Excuse me, everyone. May I have your attention for just a moment?" The chatter died down. People turned to look at him. Patricia looked furious. "David, what are you doing?" she hissed. He ignored her. "I just want to say thank you to Patricia for inviting my mother and me to this beautiful wedding." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Even though we were seated in the back, even though we were told not to talk to anyone important, even though we were treated like we did not belong." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Patricia's face turned red. "David, stop it." But David continued. "My mother Connie raised me by herself. She worked 2 jobs. She sacrificed everything so I could have a chance at a good life. She went without meals so I could eat. She stayed up late sewing patches on my clothes so I could go to school looking decent. She never complained. She never asked for help. She just loved me." I felt tears streaming down my face. David squeezed my hand. "And because of her," David said, his voice strong and clear, "I was able to go to college. I was able to start a company, a tech company, called Harrison Solutions. Maybe some of you have heard of it. A man in the crowd gasped. Wait, Harrison Solutions, the software company. David nodded. Yes, we went public last year. The company is currently valued at $2.3 billion. Silence. Complete, total silence. Patricia's mouth fell open. Gregory stared at David like he had just grown a second head. David continued, I am the founder and CEO. That limousine, it is mine. The penthouse in San Francisco, mine. The private jet, also mine. Ashley looked like she was going to faint. Gregory stepped forward, his face pale. Wait, you are David Harrison. The David Harrison. I read an article about you in Forbes last month. You are a billionaire. I am, David said simply. But that is not the point. The point is that my mother never once asked me for a dime. She never bragged about me. She never used my success to elevate herself. Because she is humble. She is kind. She is everything a mother should be. And today, she was treated like garbage by people who should have loved and respected her. He looked directly at Patricia. By people who judged her based on her clothes and her bank account. By people who forgot where they came from. Patricia opened her mouth, but no words came out. David turned to Ashley. You laughed at us. You called us cheap. But my mother is worth more than all the designer dresses and expensive jewelry in this room combined. Ashley's face crumbled. She looked down, unable to meet his eyes. David addressed the crowd one last time. I just wanted everyone here to know the truth, because my mother deserves to be seen. She deserves to be respected. And I will not stand by while she is treated as less than she is. He turned to me. Come on, Mom. Let's go. The crowd parted as we walked toward the limousine. The driver held the door open. I climbed in my legs, shaking. David slid in beside me. The door closed, and suddenly, we were in a quiet, luxurious space that smelled like leather and expensive cologne. I looked at my son, tears still streaming down my face. David, why did you not tell me? He took my hand. Because I did not want it to change anything between us. You raised me to be humble, Mom, to work hard and not show off. I have been keeping a low profile because that is what you taught me. But when I saw how they treated you today, I could not stay silent anymore. I hugged him tightly, sobbing into his shoulder. I am so proud of you, not because of your money, but because of who you are. I am who I am because of you, he said. Through the tinted window, I saw Patricia standing on the steps of the hotel. She looked lost, her perfect wedding ruined by the truth. The limousine pulled away from the hotel, and I leaned back against the seat, trying to process everything that had just happened. David sat beside me, calm and quiet. Mr. Phillips, his assistant, was in the front seat, speaking quietly on his phone. David, I said softly, I do not understand. Why did you never tell me? He sighed. I wanted to, Mom, so many times. But I also wanted you to see that success had not changed me, that I was still the same kid you raised. If I had told you about the money, the company, all of it, I worried it might change things between us. It would not have changed anything. I know that now, but I also know how you are. You would have insisted I stop sending you money every month. You would have refused any help. You are too proud and too independent. He was right. I would have done exactly that. I have been sending you checks for years, he continued. Small amounts, just to help with bills. You never questioned it, because you thought I was just a regular guy working a regular job. I thought about all those checks. $200 here, $300 there. I had assumed he was being generous on a modest salary. I never imagined he was a billionaire. How did this happen? I asked. How did you build something so big? David smiled. After I graduated from Stanford, I started working at a tech company in Silicon Valley. I saw a gap in the market for cybersecurity software tailored to small businesses. So I quit my job and started Harrison Solutions in my apartment. It was just me and 2 friends at first. We worked 20-hour days for 2 years. Then we got our first major client, then another. Things grew fast. Within 5 years, we had contracts with Fortune 500 companies. Last year, we went public. The stock exploded. And you never said anything. I wanted to surprise you. I was going to fly you out to San Francisco, show you the office, introduce you to my team. But then Patricia's wedding invitation came, and I thought maybe I could come home and we could go together. I did not expect things to turn out the way they did. I shook my head, still in disbelief. I cannot believe Patricia treated us that way. She has forgotten who she is, David said quietly. She has spent so much time trying to impress people that she lost sight of what really matters. We rode in silence for a few minutes. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Patricia. Connie, we need to talk. Please. I showed the text to David. He shook his head. You do not have to respond right now. But I knew I would have to face her eventually. Over the next few days, Patricia called me repeatedly. I did not answer. She left voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. Finally, a week after the wedding, I agreed to meet her for coffee at a small shop near my house. She arrived looking exhausted. Her makeup was minimal, and she wore jeans and a plain sweater. She looked more like the sister I remembered from childhood than the woman she had become. Connie, she said as soon as she sat down. I am so sorry. I stirred my coffee, not looking at her. Sorry for what exactly? For everything. For treating you the way I did. For being ashamed of you. For forgetting that you are my sister and that you have always been there for me. Why did you do it, Patricia? She looked down at her hands. I do not know. I got caught up in trying to impress people. Gregory's friends, his colleagues. I wanted them to see me as sophisticated and successful. I thought if they knew about my past, about how we grew up, they would not respect me. So you erased me. Yes, she whispered. And I was wrong. So wrong. Do you know what hurt the most? I asked. It was not the back row or the cheap comments. It was that you acted like I did not matter. Like all those years of me looking after you, loving you meant nothing. Patricia started crying. I know, and I hate myself for it. I do not want you to hate yourself. I just want you to remember who you are. We did not come from money, Patricia. We came from a regular family, and there is no shame in that. You are right. I lost sight of that. I got so focused on appearances that I forgot what really matters. We sat in silence for a while. Then Patricia asked, Is David really a billionaire? Apparently so. She shook her head in amazement. I had no idea, and he is so humble. He could have flaunted his wealth, but he did not. That is because I taught him that money does not define a person's worth. Patricia looked at me with tears in her eyes. You were always the better person, Connie. Even when we were kids. You were patient and kind. And I took advantage of that. We all make mistakes. Can you forgive me? I thought about it. Forgiveness did not mean forgetting. It did not mean everything would go back to the way it was. But it meant letting go of the anger and giving her a chance to do better. Yes, I said finally. But things have to change, Patricia. I am not going to be invisible anymore. And if you want me in your life, you have to treat me with respect. I will. I promise. Over the following months, Patricia and I slowly rebuilt our relationship. She made an effort to call me regularly, to ask about my life, to show genuine interest. She apologized to David as well, though their relationship remained distant. Ashley also reached out to apologize. She admitted she had been spoiled and sheltered, and the events of the wedding had been a wake-up call for her. David continued to visit me regularly. He eventually told me more about his company, his team, and his life in San Francisco. He offered to buy me a bigger house, a new car, anything I wanted. But I declined. I liked my small house. I liked my simple life. I did not need more than that. What I did accept was his love, his respect, his presence, because those were the things that mattered. As I sit here today, reflecting on everything that happened, I realize that day at Patricia's wedding was a turning point. Not because people finally saw my son's success, but because it forced everyone to confront the truth about how we treat one another. Patricia learned that wealth and appearances mean nothing if you lose your integrity. Ashley learned that judging people based on superficial things only reveals your own shallowness. And I learned that I did not need anyone's validation to know my worth. I spent so many years feeling invisible, feeling less than, because I did not have money or status. But the truth is, I was never less than anyone. I raised a good man. I lived with dignity. I loved without conditions. And that is something no amount of money can buy. David did not save me that day. I had already saved myself by refusing to let their cruelty break me. But he did give me something invaluable. He showed me that the values I taught him mattered, that humility, hard work, and love are worth more than any designer dress or fancy car. Today, Patricia and I have a better relationship than we have had in years. It is not perfect, but it is honest. She has become more grounded, more aware of what truly matters. And I have learned to set boundaries, to demand respect, not just hope for it. David continues to thrive. His company is growing, and he is making a real difference in the world of technology. But more importantly, he remains the kind, humble man I raised him to be. He calls me every week. He visits whenever he can. And he never lets me forget that I am loved. So let me ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation where people judged you unfairly? Have you ever felt invisible or unworthy because of someone else's cruelty? If so, I want you to know that you are not alone. Your worth is not determined by what you wear, where you live, or how much money you have. Your worth comes from who you are on the inside. If this story resonated with you, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had a moment where someone underestimated you only to be proven wrong? Tell me your story. And if you found value in what I shared today, please hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Your support means the world to me. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that dignity and self-worth come from within. No matter what anyone else thinks, you know who you are. And that is enough. May you always stand tall, love deeply, and never let anyone make you feel small. Take care, and I will see you in the next story.